Welcome guys to episode number 4, and as you can see we have an upgrade in not our office but our scenery here, and hopefully the sound is a lot better than last time. So we are going to dive into the why and how on the British sneaker brand Loki, how they have implemented 3D, why they have implemented 3D, and because they have done a lot of different things. We're gonna dive deep into that in this episode. And with me today I have
Mattias, as always.
As always, Mattias. And Mattias has been with them from the start, working with them. And before we dive into just the start, I would just advise you to scan the QR code. It's somewhere around here. Where you can actually try their shoe on and see the virtual try-on experience for yourself. But so, Loki,
yes,
how did they start working with 3D?
Actually, it's a pretty different story from the other ones we have been talking about. They had a problem with their product images, that they felt that they were inconsistent on the product listing page. So some were bigger, some were smaller, some were mispositioned to the left, to the right, up, bottom, and so on. So they were looking for a solution to have the minimum desired quality that they needed, but also most importantly consistency, which was more easily to do with 3D. So that was the main reason for why we scanned everything from the beginning. Then they realized that there is more cool and maybe sophisticated stuff than just the images that you can do when you have done this. But that was the starting point actually.
Yeah, so that's the starting point. They had a problem, they tried to solve it.
They solved it.
Yeah, and they solved it, and then they find other things as well.
Exactly.
So what makes the Loki implementation onto their site so special, would you say?
The most special thing is that they have really maximized the capabilities. They have implemented all of the technologies that we today offer. So they have images from us on all products, they have 3D, they have videos, they have virtual try-on and augmented reality. So they have all of it. So they're really providing a complete experience of the products, and the customer can choose whatever they want themselves. But they have a hypothesis that people want to explore the products just like in a physical store. So they're leading with the 3D, even though the images was the primary reason for why they started working with this. So that is truly exceptional with Loki.
Yeah, and we can just do like this, and then it comes a QR code where you can go onto their site and just check it out yourselves, because we can sit and talk about it all we want, but when you experience this, you understand it completely.
It's super nice.
But isn't this also true? Like, as again, we have a script now. We're going off script. A lot of our customers, they're starting out at some point with some issue, some problem. And then they also figure out that, I can use it here. Can you name some more examples where it happened? Like we started at square A, and then pretty quickly we ended up at square H.
Yeah, for sure. Specifically talking about Loki, I actually found something in my email inbox the other day, which I wasn't aware of myself. And they sent a newsletter with a new product drop, where I could, just from the email, try the shoes directly with a click of a button. So that's just one example. I know that they also heavily used it in their pre-launch for a new collection. So they made pretty much the entire marketing material with the 3D model. And they have a very competent in-house 3D artist who made these like $1 million advertisements. It looks so crisp and so nice about the new shoes. But it was all made for 3D and was made all very fast and high variety of the creative.
Yeah. So let's go through all the different technologies that they are using. So they're using images that are rendered from 3D.
Exactly.
They are using videos that are rendered from 3D.
Yeah.
They use the augmented reality, which like you can place the shoe on the table, you can see it, and also do a lot of in the marketing efforts. And they have the virtual try-on, and they have the 3D viewer.
Exactly.
So they do everything.
Everything. And also for the photos, what is exceptional for them, if we compare with other Fibbl customers, is that they have actually included both shoes. So for some reasons, some brands want to have 2 shoes. I know for Loki, they take a lot of inspiration from the other friends in the industry, like the premium high-end segment, and they have found out that people usually have 2 shoes on those photos. So we scanned both of them, and we set up a scene that made sure that they could have this consistency with 2 shoes in the photos.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the experiences, is single shoe.
So everybody who's listening now, okay, so you have a 3D model, and then you look at their site, and then you see, okay, here we have a lot of like product images.
Yeah.
Explain the process. How do we do that? How do our production team make sure that it's the quality that the customer wants, that the angles, the lighting, all that stuff? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I will do it on a high level because there are so many details.
We don't have 3 hours. So.
First of all, we get the shoes physically, so we can actually scan them in our studio. Then we have a magical process that make these crisp 3D models. But from the 3D models, we work similar to a traditional photographer, but the main comparison and difference is that we do it digitally instead of physically. So just like a photographer put up the lighting, have a studio with a certain background, change the shoe for getting into angles, we do that as well, but we do that in a digital studio. And to come to that end result that you guys are seeing here, that was a creative process with our team, our rock stars at Fibbl, and the Loki team, where they had their style guides and preferences on. They wanted 2 shoes on this angle, but 1 shoe here. They wanted a slight gradient on the background. They have a reference lighting, all of this, including like naming conventions, file formats, file size, everything like that. And based on their wishes and their guidelines, we put up a template specifically for them, and the template was there, and then we just like a factory has pushed everything through, because then we had like 160 Loki shoes that we pushed through that, and then we delivered it.
So also just to clarify for the people who are listening, let's say they call you up tomorrow and say, we have a new collection, we have 200 new shoes, we need product images.
Yeah.
So we don't need to do anything else with the template we already created.
Precisely.
So then we can scan it and then render the product images, and then they're good to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And everything will be just as the other one. So once again, talking about consistency, of course they had a short-term problem they were trying to solve, but they also, the main cause for why they got where they got was because they had one studio at one time, another studio at a second time, a third time. So naturally it became an inconsistency.
Yeah.
But with us, we can have the same consistency through all years and all future, basically. And that goes as well if they tomorrow realize that, well, we are missing this angle because this new type of shoes has this kind of particular detail on the heel or the sole or whatever it could be. We can just add another angle to that, or we can change the background. We do that digitally. So that's also one of the benefits that they saw, that they have a more flexible and agile solution to the product imagery.
Yeah, so let's say we have a never out of stock shoe. I'm going to sell this forever. This is my like the first one that is always popular.
Yeah.
And then I call you up and I say, okay, I need 3 more angles.
Yeah.
Then we don't need to scan the shoe again.
No, exactly. We just make the template. We have the raw 3D model, which we push through the pipeline, and the end result is the same.
So a question off script again. You who are working a lot with like different brands, the bag brand, the shoe brands, like 40, 50, 60 of them. What do you think is going to be the long-term solution in regards to product images? So do you see this working if you start from 3D? Do you see it as a more long-term solution, or do you think that photography still has its place?
I think that neither can be excluded, because there are today, 2024, there are limitations with 3D. I mean, especially for footwear brands, I understand if people want to have on-feet images, and then maybe it makes more sense to have lifestyle photos in New York or whatever kind of mood you want to communicate. But I think that definitely that starting from 3D is a good investment, because you can reduce the cost and the time to get the photos. as well as you have an asset that you can work with. So once again, I don't think people think of photos like that today, but maybe they should. Like, what angle is actually the best? Maybe for the site, you always want to have the right side angle, as everyone has. But what if another type of angle works better for Facebook ads or Google ads? And I think people do not have a process and a framework to really test that today. They're just doing as they always have been doing. So I think replacing that process with 3D could open up so many doors in terms of the photo. But then I think that also allows the creative people to spend more time on the things that is more sophisticated and more advanced and complex, like lifestyle photos or on-feed photos, for example. So I think both is going to have its place.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And if we segue back to, you mentioned that Loki did some animations or some videos. So talk a little bit about, let's say, okay, here you have a 3D model. I want this type of video. Hopefully we're gonna see it here now. Like, okay, how do I start? How do I get this video if I have the 3D model?
That's I think that's an exploration phase. I mean, it's like how did you take your first steps when you were a child?
Yeah.
So, but for Loki and for the brands that I've been working with, I have tried to simplify the way it works. And how I explain it is that you need two things. You need a 3D model, and you need someone with a bit of a 3D software knowledge. Yeah. If you have that, you can create magic. And you can create those kind of creatives that agencies would charge 6 figures for. So that's the only thing you need. And then you just need a crazy idea or a certain way you want to present your product. So as you see here on the video, they made like a very dramatic reveal of the shoe with stones breaking, and it was like looking like a laboratory and stuff like that. And I mean, you couldn't do that physically, like build up that kind of environment. So that just shows that the imagination sets limitation. But really what you need is the 3D model, one that can work with 3D software, and then some crazy ideas that you want to realize.
Yeah, marketing departments usually have a lot of crazy ideas, am I right? But you mentioned earlier, so we're going to segue into the strategy about starting working with 3D. And you mentioned it before, like they want to create the in-store experience offline. Talk a little bit more about, I know we've talked about 3D first, maybe there are some first-time viewers here. Like, what is 3D first? Why are Loki adapting to it? And what's the part of their strategy moving forward? Yeah.
So just to summarize what 3D first is, that is when you lead with the 3D model and you have the 2D content secondary. And the best visual example is here. Yeah. And basically the photos was the main reason for Loki, for why they started. But obviously they, as everyone else, haven't really eliminated the returns. So still a few percentages are returning the shoes. And obviously today you can get some experience in-store, offline, that you can't get online really. And that's where they saw that this also fit into the picture. That having all of these technologies can allow the consumer to really experience the products a little bit closer to a physical store, or almost like 100% one-to-one. So the 3D viewer in their case is their answer and replicate on seeing something on the product shelf, picking it up and twist and turn it and explore it just the way you want it.
No.
And we talked a lot about this when we produced the images, because I think they have around 7 to 8 angles, and we decided that we want to have the 3D model first because it really makes sense that the consumer can control themselves what they want to see. Maybe you're more interested about the sole, I'm more interested about the material. So instead of going through 5, 6, 7 images that are relevant for me, I can myself control how I want to look at it. So that's mimicking the offline shelf in-store behavior, basically.
And talk a little bit about, because I know that you dove into some data regarding the engagement rate in the 3D viewer. Can you also talk a little bit about, I know we have talked with a lot of brands, how many people are viewing the last image, etc. But what would you say is a good engagement rate for the 3D first experience?
Yeah, I actually made a LinkedIn post about this the other week, and the worst case scenario I have seen is 52%. That means that 52% of the ones that could have done it actually begins to experience and look at your product. And the numbers I have seen when it comes to, because the replicate of that, the other side of that is that you as a consumer, you watch all of the photos. You watch photo number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I have seen with some brands that only about 5 to 10% are actually looking at the 5th photo. And the 5th photo is usually the sole. And I would argue that the sole is a pretty important part of a shoe. So you usually talk a lot about this with the brands, like how do you experience people to make a good decision if they haven't really experienced the product? So we want to make it easy for them to do that. So 52% is the worst case scenario, but I see up to 80, 85%, which is insane numbers compared to how many are then viewing the entire product based on photos. So that's a very interesting KPI, as well as the time spent on site, of course, which usually doubles.
Yeah, and that's pretty massive, doubling the session time. But of course, we all know when you get this engagement that we have right now, if we were to sit digitally, it would be a little bit different. But when you have an interaction with the product, with the person, something, you are more likely to engage. You're more likely to spend more time if I just sat here talking to a wall. Yeah, I wouldn't have any back and forth. So it's more of a dialogue, because I know that you've talked a lot about the virtual try-on feature, how to explain that, how to use questions and pop-ups and sliders. So it's more of, I've seen you looking like, hey, want to try it out?
Yeah.
Instead of like buy, just a flat image.
And the interaction is one part of it. I think what's pretty remarkable as well is that you can get closer to the product, like actually physically. Like some photos, you have someone on the other side controlling what you see and what you don't see. So you maybe have this kind of distance. In some experiences when I buy shoes myself on a very large retailer that doesn't have us, I cannot really get the feeling of the material or the color or stuff like that. And that's also a big comparison with the 3D, that you can actually come so close, you can feel the leather. You can feel the purple tones in it or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I've heard it so many times with different brands in the beginning of processes, like we need to communicate how our product feels.
Exactly.
And then you need to have pretty good quality on if you have photos or especially in the 3D viewer.
Yeah.
So you can come that close. And I want to segment, like we were talking a lot about Loki, what they have done well, how they are thinking. But did they have any challenges, and what's the implication of those challenges from your perspective? Like from they started talking to us until their whole site is 3D first.
I guess the main challenge that we together faced was that they were kind of used to retouch their images.
Okay.
So we were talking a lot about that. Of course, you want to do it to a certain extent, so it looks like the way you want it to look, but you also need to balance the way it looks in real life. And with the previous provider that they had, maybe some things were too overexposed to one of the other side. So there was a lot of balance in terms of that, like how do we visually present this product the best way? And it wasn't about who has right or who has wrong. It's the fact that you and me, we look kind of light right now because we're Swedish and it's not summer yet and so on. But if we will have not that white light and a yellow light instead, we will look differently.
Yeah.
And so is it with products as well. And the context that you put the product in, of course, affects how the other side is perceiving that. So we talked a lot about that, and it especially was not challenging, but it was something we had to think of a little bit extra, because we didn't just need to think of that for the photos. We had 5 experiences that you can see the product, you can experience the product. So we needed to find the consistency and the best recipe there as well. But it was a challenge, but nothing that was possible to solve, and I think we made it pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. And could you please also explain the process from like when we first started speaking with Loki, the production phase, like not until today, but until they launched. And like, because if you're a first time viewer here, maybe you're like, okay, but how does it work? How is the process? Could you explain the process, like just over in real like bullet points, how the process worked?
So there were some special requirements, so there were some special processes, but in general, everything from start when we came to the idea, okay, what should we accomplish here and why should we do it? Then it was rather smooth sailing, getting the products to Stockholm, getting them scanned, making the way they want to look it, sending them back, because then we had the raw material we needed. And then from there, with the same scan, we just produced all of the experiences. And in parallel, when the products was on the way to us, I started working with the developers to make sure that everything was the best UX and UI wise, balancing their branding guidelines and their wishes, of course. So there was some launches and some dates that we had to adapt to, but usually that process can be like 1 week if everything goes as it should. So that was the minimal.
Yeah, it's not 6 months and then we
No. We're talking about days sometimes. So that's the minor issue and the smallest issue of everything. And now, of course, we have everything up and running. So the launch was successful, both a limited exclusive launch, but also the overall never out of stock launch. And now we're talking about, okay, so what can we see now in the data? What do we do more? What can we change? How can we optimize? So now we also have the tools to evolve. Now we can see how people are actually interacting with this.
Yeah, because you always talk about the data, look at the data, learn, rinse, repeat, that type of deal. But where do you see now, so you say they're up and running, they made a launch with their product and an exclusive launch. What are you starting to talk about right now? Because I know there's something that happens usually after a few months. The brand has been live.
Yep.
They're starting to look to other things. Like we said, we have a 3D model. We have it on the website. We have done some animations, some videos. Now what? What are we going to do now?
So there are so many things you can do. And we are still talking about which one to do first, prioritizing the effort it takes, but also the potential impact it can have. But I think one of the things that we both have a very strong hypothesis around is going to work well, that is 3D on Google Shopping. So Loki sells in the US, and we know that Google has released a preview version of 3D in Google Shopping in the US, but some rumors says also it's going to be available now in the UK. So we're going to try to work on that. Explain that. Like, okay, 3D Google Shopping. Yeah.
What's that?
I'm not going to pretend that I know it, because I haven't really seen it in real life either. I have just seen a blog post from Google, so I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
But what I have seen in the preview links from Google, that is that you actually have product listings. Just the way when you search for Nike, Adidas, or Vans or whatever, the first row with products, with the photos, the price, the title, and everything like that. But you replace the image with the 3D model.
Yeah.
So once again, you can, as a consumer, you can start interacting with it there, twist and turn, and experience it, just as early in the search results. So
that's
before
cool.
you even come to the website.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, okay, now I'm gonna wrap it up. Soon I will be out of time. But so, if you could say 3 things, like what would you say would be a good idea to know about Fibbl, like as a company? Let's say it's a brand out there looking at this right now, like, okay, what's good to know about Fibbl as a company? The e-commerce integration and how you can customize the e-commerce integration. Like, talk a little bit about the script, because we always know, like, we say, yeah, it's an integration or implementation, then brands usually, okay, it's going to take 100 hours, it's going to be complicated. Like, just if you can explain those 3 things.
So I start with what's good to know about Fibbl.
Yeah.
I think the first one that is good and quite unique on the market is that we have 2 legs, so to say. We have both the production of 3D, but also the distribution of 3D experiences. So we can both do the experiences that you guys have seen today, but we can also leverage the raw material and the input into that as well. Usually you have to find one partner for either and another for the second.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And I think one good thing to mention as well is that we don't sit here and think that we are having some secret. I mean, 3D and AR has existed for 10, 15, 20 years. It's nothing new. What is new and why is now starting to become a shift in the e-commerce world is that vendors like us are figuring out a way to actually produce these 3D models fast, cheap, and with that high quality that we really need to change from 2D to 3D. So that's what's new. And now when I answer this, I forgot your second question.
The customization part.
Customization, yes. So wrapping that up, getting the 3D and getting even the option to do all of this experience that you have seen today, that is not a hard thing. Ship the products, you get them back, you have the files. Then how do you create these experiences online? It's a simple script. We stream the technology, so it puts on top of your e-commerce setup. And usually, like, it doesn't take more than 1 hour. Like, the script itself, the code itself is a copy and paste. What takes most time is that some designer want to control if it's going to be round or short buttons or what color it's going to be and so on. And maybe some thinking process of, okay, how do we do this actually so people understand what it is. But we're talking about hours, 1, 2, then it's up and running, including having analytics and data on how does this actually work. And the script only allows you to stream the technologies. So you get the possibility to have these experiences. Then how it's going to look, how it's going to work, that is fully customizable.
Yeah.
It's just like you are designing something on your product page today. HTML, CSS, like whatever kind of framework you're using to do all of the experiences, you do it as you usually do it. So fully customizable, basically.
Very simple. And before we wrap up, like, what's the biggest learning from Loki? Let's say there's a brand out there listening now. They're interested. They're trying to figure this out. What are your best tips and learnings from Loki that they could bring to their company and talk about in order to make it a successful as soon as possible?
No, but I think, we have already talked a lot about 3D first and this shift and what it does and data and everything. So that's all news almost nowadays, which they have just adapted and just done because it's the way it should be. But what I think Loki has done particularly good is that they have really thought through everything and made an extra extension of, okay, now we have this possibility. How do we maximize the value? And I think the creatives that they made, both photos and videos, before launching the products and teasing the community and the potential buyers about this, that was exceptional. Because once again, agencies would have charged 6 figures for that. But I know that they paid very far from that to get that content. And the main reason was because they had the 3D model and that opened up so many doors. So I think just having that key, that is the key. Then you can plan and tap into the existing marketing or go-to-market process that you usually have. But I think that if there was one thing that I had to summarize, it's the entire extension and the seamless red thread from launch to selling the product and then after purchase, what has happened there.
Awesome, great advice. And I am going to cut the webinar here, and like we always say, if you have any questions regarding 3D, e-commerce, like book a meeting with me or Mattias. We will try to help you out as best as possible. Please give us feedback if there are topics that you want us to dive into in the future. We're happy to take some requests, or if you have questions, just contact us on LinkedIn or email addresses. They will be up here somewhere. So if you have listened this far, we thank you very much, and hopefully you have learned something that you can bring to your business. So thanks a lot, and take care.
Bye-bye.